Uh, Hello, everybody. Now we are in the fourth talk of VR Talks, and the program, the VR Storytellers program, is ongoing. And today we're going to listen Rachel Uva. I may make a little introduction. She's an artist and organizer whose background is in audio engineering and VFX compositing. And also she's a founder of School of Machines Making and Make Believe, which was a school in Berlin and opened in 2014. And now she's also keen on, as she declared, that she is keen on inventing one-of-a-kind hands-on learning experience in this field of art, technology, and design and human connection. So I'm giving the ground to Rachel, and thanks a lot.
Great, okay. Thanks for inviting me, first of all. My name is Rachel Uwa, and I guess I will just start to share my screen. Actually, before I start, so basically, I would just, my plan is to give a little bit about my background and show some student works to kind of give an impression of the things that we've been doing over the last few years at the school. And then I wanted to talk about experiences and then get into some projects that I think kind of talk to this, and then share some thoughts. And then, yeah, so I will just start. Uh-oh, it says, oh yeah, I'm sorry. Second.
Now we see your screen.
Do you see the presentation?
It's gone. It says it's ended.
Okay. This is the conversation of our times. I see it, I don't see it.
Do you hear me? I hear you.
Okay, yeah, exactly, okay.
Okay.
Oh, wait, sorry. Present. Okay, hopefully this is it. So, okay, so I started to, well, my background is in audio and visual effects, as you mentioned, and before that, just to say that I'm from the US and I've been living in Berlin, Germany for the last 16 years. And originally I came because politics was getting really crazy. The US started bombing Iraq in 2003, and at the time people were, it was, you know, mixed, of course, and but they said love it or leave it. And I thought, okay, I don't believe in what the government is doing, and so I'm going to find another place. And actually I came to Germany because my feeling at the time was that Germans have an understanding of like shame for their government. And so I thought, like, in a way, because I felt a lot of shame for the US government at the time, and being American, I thought, like, okay, this is the perfect place to go, or we can kind of all like sympathize, empathize, and talk about new ways, I don't know, that things could be. So then eventually I've been in Berlin, and I started School of Machines in 2014. And I think the idea, I mean, essentially I was taking a lot of workshops and classes and starting to organize workshops and classes and meetups and a whole bunch of things. And I thought, I want to find a way for people to have longer experiences for learning. It's like more in depth. Because usually the option is either a short workshop or you go back to university, but it seems like an extreme option. And so I thought, I'll create a school and we'll run programs where people can come, and in a short period of time, like 4 full-time weeks, they can start with the technology and create an output and showcase it in an exhibition, and yeah, and magic will happen. So that's what I did. Started the school, and so I wanted to just show some of the projects of things that we've been working on. So initially we were kind of working specifically with coding and digital physical computing. So working with interactive electronics and things. And so these are just some impressions. For people who don't know, computer vision, for example, is like you can imagine like when a camera is looking at, say you're filming with a camera and you film the scene and then you've captured the video, but computer vision is when you film that same scene and then the computer understands, or the camera understands what it's looking at. So it can say, oh, this is a person, this is a face, etc. So at the beginning we were focusing, or we have focused several classes on that theme, and creating projections in public space and dancing robots, or I mean, everybody's free to create the thing that they're most interested in. I think at the beginning of the school, I encourage people to be more playful and do kind of like just really fun things. So for example, there's this one image with the Barbie, you know, there was like kind of like radical robot competition and someone made a little robot out of Barbies. And so yeah, that's kind of the thing we were playing around with. And then the following year, we got into different topics. So for example, data viz and making data art, and thinking about futures in outer space and what it would mean to like speculate about what the futures could be about. And people did projects on, you know, taking the data from planes flying overhead the city and kind of mapping. So the one project on the bottom has to do with these motors, and then when a plane is flying across, the motors would track the pattern of the plane moving and they would spin. And so I really encourage people to be playful with technology and not to, yeah, because I think that's the only way you learn really, is to start being playful and not take things too seriously. I mean, that was my impression at the beginning, at least. And I mean, through the classes, I think it's kind of a mix of playful and a little bit more serious, as I kind of talk about. But so, you know, then we started to do VR classes and getting into 360 and computer vision again, and machine learning. And we had a lot of different kinds of projects. For example, in the machine learning class, what came out of the machine learning class was like a play based on relationships, based on the material that the machine learning algorithm output. Or someone took a database of prison tattoos and created, and then it generated its own prison tattoos, and then there was a tattoo artist at the exhibition. So I think people were trying to kind of think of new ways to approach the same technologies, because at this point, I mean, for several years now, computer vision, machine learning, VR, AR, all these things have been out. And so, and we've seen a lot of projects that are quite similar. And so I think people are trying to start exploring new ways and new approaches. And then in the next year, we started to expand. We did a project in Belgrade, Serbia, called Feeling and Thinking in the Age of AI, and it was a machine learning focused class. And we did some speculative design, some LARPing. The first time we did sound classes, so working with sound technology and binaural sound also, and performance art, a lot of performance art kind of things. And then the following year, we ran another machine learning class, a little bit differently focused, and we created immersive sound experiences. This slide over here was done at an immersive sound studio in Berlin at the Funkhaus, and we started to get into AR. We did our first class on augmented reality, and the thing I really loved about that is that, you know, I was trying to, because I always try to combine something going on with humans in society with the technology that we're going to focus on. And so, for example, with augmented reality, I was having a little bit of trouble because I was like, what is the topic of we're going to focus on? And then with some friends, we started to talk about it. And then the question came up, well, what is reality actually? Why do we go immediately to technology and think about what can we do with augmented reality? First, we need to stop and question what reality actually is. And of course, because we're all diverse humans coming from different places, we all have a different idea about that, what reality is. And so it just brings up a lot of really interesting dialogues, along with people learning about new ways to work with technology, which is kind of a thing that I super love. So then I wanted to talk a little bit about what an experience is. So I went to a conference in 2016 called Weird Reality. It's a super cool conference. I think the videos are online. I can put the links a little later. But at the time, it was a lot of educators, so a lot of inspiration, people who started to work with virtual reality, but also a bunch of educators who were like, how do we teach virtual reality? Because it started to become more and more of a topic, and headsets started to get more affordable, and people were trying to figure out what they would do, or what's the best way to bring this stuff to the classroom. And I was in this room of a bunch of educators, and everybody was talking about, how do we teach VR? Do we use Unity, or do we use Unreal, or maybe we use some kind of like web platform? And so everybody was talking about the tools, and we had already had the experience of running a 360 class. And then I was like, well, what about starting with the fundamentals? So like, actually don't start with the technology, start with the question, what is an experience, and have people explore that first. So in putting this presentation together, I was thinking, actually, because we talk a lot about experiences, and so it's like, well, what is the definition of an experience, actually? And so I was thinking that I think an experience is the intersection of emotion and context. And it's like, you know, it's like the moment when you're thinking to yourself, okay, are you telling the story? This is what happened, and this is how it made me feel. So, you know, if we would pause and think about what we all have experienced in life, or what, you know, if someone asked us what is an experience that we recall in our lives that was very impactful, we might think about those experiences. And then I guess I would just say, like, to question, I mean, this is just a theory of mine, that an experience has to do with the intersection of something, a context, and an emotion. So, but I think it would be interesting just to kind of to see if people's experience is the same. Like, do you, when you think about your experience, do you think about, does it involve a feeling, and does it involve a situation that you were presented with? And actually, what matters most in that moment is the feeling that we got out of it. And I think that's the thing that creates the experience. So in a lot of our classes, I mean, classes are always different depending on the topics, but we really like to try, especially for the AR and VR classes, to think about what is an experience first and foremost. And so the first week of classes, which are usually 4 weeks long, the first week we spend a lot of time, everybody talking about who they are and what they care about, and talking about things they've seen in the world, issues they've seen, things that matter to them, things they wish were different. And then they share their work, so everybody kind of knows who's in the room. And then we start to do playful exercises, thinking about the technology, but not using the technology. So in this case, for example, in this image, it was a VR class, actually a social VR class, exploring the experience of multiple users in one VR experience. And so the thing that they came up with, this team came up with in the first week, was a really cool project, actually. So if you see this guy who's wearing these sunglasses, and they're the kind of sunglasses where you can see, you know, if you look into them, you can see objects behind. And so the way that this project works is that you have an umbrella. One person has an umbrella. The other person is holding on to somebody's face. And you see the reflection. The goal is to make sure that you always see the reflection of the umbrella in the glasses. And so it's super interesting. I got to experience both ways. And you know, at first, when you're holding someone's face, the thing is that you're like really afraid to hurt them. You know, that's the first feeling. You're like, okay, I'm gonna hold this person's face. I don't want to hurt them, but I need to make sure that the umbrella is in the glasses. And so you kind of go really slowly. And then it's so interesting because I feel like there's one moment, and you can feel it physically, where the person stops thinking of you as a human and starts to think of you as just a game piece, you know, and because your head starts jerking faster, or you start jerking someone's head faster, you know, because you're like, no, I want to make sure that I never, you know, I need to win or something. And so, so that's kind of a thing, I think, that's really, really nice to think about before you start to think, you know, if you start to get really excited about AR and VR, and you start to think, okay, what do I do? What technology do I need to know? And it's like, well, let's back up a little bit and start to think about what is an experience. What is an experience to you? What is it, you know, and like your community, if you're creating an experience for your community. So starting to first not include technology in your initial ideas is kind of the thing. So another experience we created at the school, we did a program called Way in Escaping, which was focused on creating an escape room experience. But one of the ideas was also that, you know, because I think we all have this experience of like, waiting for a virtual reality experience where you're waiting like 45 minutes in a queue, and you're just kind of standing there, and like people who know each other are talking. If you don't know anybody, you're just standing there. And so I had this idea that I think waiting rooms and waiting room design will be a career of the future. And so the idea in this class was that we would create an escape room experience, but at the same time we would create a waiting room for in preparation for that escape room. And the waiting room would actually also be part of the narrative and try to tell the story. And so this project was so wonderful. And the topic we ended up exploring was the idea of when you are dead, but you're not, like, you're kind of in this holding cell. It's like, maybe like, do you actually die and go to the afterlife, or do you come back? Maybe it's like the hospital space or something, but it's just like the bardo, the space in between where you're not sure. And so the escape room was all of thinking back about your experiences in life and asking questions about it and trying to kind of find clues to bring you back to life or not. So just another way to think about an experience. Also, this one was part of the initial first week of classes where one group created this kind of on the beach experience that we ended up taking to a conference, a Mozilla conference. They invited us to come and share this experience with people in the in kind of the lobby space of the event. And so this experience was super cool too. I mean, it's definitely more playful. So basically, it was like someone sitting in a chair and they had their feet in sand and they're wearing this box on their head. And the thing is that it wasn't actually a VR experience. It was just an audio sensory experience. And so they had these headphones on, there was this box over their head, and then the song was basically playing a soundtrack to mimic the experience of being on a beach. And then someone would come over and they would, kind of place the smell of fish and sea around your face. And then someone would blow a hairdryer on your skin to feel the heat as if it was the sun. And so I think it was another quite lovely experience that had little to do with technology, definitely not anything to do with the headset, but it was still quite playful. And so I just wanted to bring this up because I think it's also another way to think about creating a virtual experience. A virtual experience doesn't have to include visuals. It can also just include other senses. So this is a project which maybe a lot of people know about. It's called Machine to Be Another Lab, and the project is called Machine to Be Another. And I just wanted to bring this project in because I think it's also starting to think about what it means to work with technology and virtual experiences, virtual reality experiences. So this project was the first VR experience that I ever had it was at a conference with a small group of people. And the idea with this project is that you have the experience of being another person. So two people put on a headset, and then one person has a camera, and so you on their chest, and so you can see yourself in the VR headset, but actually you are the other person. And so it's really interesting, for example, with the idea of gender swap, to feel like you're another gender, to have that experience. And I remember when I first put it on, I almost panicked, I almost wanted to rip the thing off my head because it's such an intense experience, but also such an amazing experience. And I remember it was like a small group of people that took that workshop, like 10 of us. And we afterwards were like so super bonded because we were just like, oh my God, I can't believe we were all so lucky and great. We were also grateful to have had that experience together. And so I think this is another thing, that it doesn't have to be super intense, but it could be super thoughtful. And this is another way to think about a VR project without thinking about, oh no, I need to know how to design 3D worlds and I need to do all these big things. It can also be really simple and super poetic at the same time. So that's definitely a project I would encourage people to check out. So this is a project that came out in one of our classes in 2014. It was a kind of a similar thing of focusing on the more personal. So what they did was they had this one student created an experience for one person, and the way it was set up was that there was a Kinect camera looking at them from above, And so when they put the headset on, they could see themselves. And then the idea was that they would draw themselves seeing themselves. And then they would put the artwork, hang it up on the wall behind them. And that ended up being like one of the most popular experiences at the first exhibition that we ever did. And I always like to talk about this project because the student had thought, you know, the original idea that I wanted to create I didn't have time for it, so I think I'm just not going to create a project. And myself and the instructors really encouraged him to continue with, like, try another idea out, because you always learn from the experience of sharing your work. And so this he created in, like, I think in the span of like 2 or 3 days, right at the end before the exhibition, and then it was the most popular. So I like to talk about this because I like to encourage people who are thinking, oh, you know, I can't come up with anything, I'm not going to do it. And it's like, just do any little thing, any simple thing that you can create, because you're going to learn from it. You're going to learn from the experience of watching other people with your project. And then you'll get to say, hey, look at this thing I created, you know? And so I feel like when we create, it's like one of those things, like if you eat candy, it might make you want to eat more candy. So like when you create works, it makes you excited to create the next work. So yeah, I like to talk about that one. This is another VR project that came about in one of our classes, where the student wanted to explore the experience of walking across her body. And so she created a 3D version of her own body. And this was actually interesting. She mixed it with computer vision as well. And so the way that it worked was someone on the headset to experience the whole world of this 3D body. And then also their face was someone else's face was being tracked, actually. And so whenever the other person blinked inside the virtual reality experience, a tear dropped from this 3D body's eyes. And so in the end, there were just like a bunch of tears. And she kind of wanted to express like her own emotions and thinking about how complicated it is to be human and how emotional it is. And also just kind of thinking about our bodies, which is the thing that we don't normally think about with VR. In a way, it's almost an escape from our body. But so I think it's just, there are a lot of really, really interesting ways to approach these things. And this is another project from a student in one of our classes. He really had this idea of wanting to explore his childhood. And so he came to Berlin from Canada with already his idea was in mind. And he wanted to recreate scenes from his childhood and to try to understand it. And actually, I mean, I wanted to share this project in particular. I mean, he set it up really simple. If you can see, there are these cardboard boxes. So he created this scene that people could experience the VR headset in, and also it was used for filming. But I mean, simple cardboard boxes to tell the story of building up the walls in his childhood memories and trying to understand. And at this point, I feel like even in just the last 6 months, I've heard so many projects of people, especially men actually, who are trying to understand their childhood. And so they're creating works to figure out what the heck was that, you know? I think it's so fascinating because in a moment, obviously, when we're children, we have no idea what's going on and things are just happening to us. And so to recreate the experience, to try to understand what happened to you in the past, I think is such an amazing use of technology. And I wanted to encourage people also with this idea to think about, you know, something, maybe there are things in your life that you don't even have words for, but starting to put that into your artwork and maybe get a different perspective is really a valuable experience. And this is another project that a student created, and super beautiful. So he's originally a photographer, and he does also really amazing videos. And so he created he created an experience that was trying to understand mental illness. And so there was this beautiful dialogue and kind of a trip on the water and ending up in this kind of forest space with this character. And so I just, honestly, when I saw this project, because I actually didn't know anything about what he was doing, he was kind of very secretive of his project as we were going along in the class. And then I saw this at the final exhibition and I was just crying. Like I cried so much because it was, I don't think that I hadn't seen anyone at that point exploring mental illness in such a in kind of a profound way and just really honest and putting everything out on the table. And it was just so beautiful. So again, I mean, I really encourage students in classes to try to think about who they are and what they care about, and to put that into their work. And I realize that obviously not for everybody, but the reality is that students who come here really want that. And I think that people are not giving them the opportunity. You know, like, how many times has someone come to you and said, I know you had a difficult life, a difficult childhood. Here's some time and some space and some, you know, some devices, some technology to work with. And, you know, here, why don't you explore this and see what comes of that, you know, and like, see, you know, try to like heal yourself, you know, like nobody ever gets told that. But I think that if we did all get told this, we would jump at the chance, you know, because there's just so many things. I mean, the reality is everything that happens to us in our lives, it just accumulates and it just stays in our memory. And we, you know, and there are consequences to these things. And so to try to give humans the opportunity to explore what has happened to them in a way that lets them also be creative and poetic at the same time, so that the focus isn't about hurt experiences, the focus is about the art. I feel like that's another really important way that can help a lot of people to move forward with their lives in more positive, healthy ways. So this is kind of the approach that we're taking with the school, and I wanted to share that with you all because I think it's really important, and I want more people, more humans to understand this process because I think it's really valuable. So then I just want to, you know, I have this approach to creating works with using technology. And I thought that this group in particular who are about to create VR experiences, I thought that they could also stand to listen to them. So I want to encourage people to prototype their ideas as quickly as possible, ideally without technology, because also too, like, if you spend so much time trying to get the technology to work, but the idea ends up falling flat and is not interesting, then, you know, you've wasted a lot of time. So the best thing that you can do is create a prototype of your idea and have somebody try it and see what it feels like. And then you can see, like, was that the feeling I wanted them to feel? And kind of explore things that way and do quick iterations so you're not always stuck in your head and thinking about your ideas but never actually making anything happen. And I think, I mean, for me personally, I think that a great way to start projects when you're trying to think of what to do is start with humans and actually look inside, start with yourself. And I like to say who you are matters, what you've lived through matters. I feel like it's important for people to know that, and that they should really consider putting who they are and what they care about into their work. And I see art as free therapy, so I think it's a chance to create something that people may not have words for yet. And actually, when we look, I mean, most of the time when I'm looking at the classes that we're doing, the technology is actually the easy part. But I think that, you know, I wish that people would focus on feeling like good, whole human beings who are excited about being alive. And in fact, if I could just do classes on self-confidence, the technology is the easy part, the self-confidence is the hard part. And so I feel like the more we create, the more we feel good about ourselves, the more, you know, it's just kind of a cycle. So I really think this is why doing is so important. I think it builds up our confidence in a way we don't know if we think, I'm just going to focus on self-confidence and then being confused about what that even means. And well, I think it's important to be humble, be critical and question everything, learn to communicate what you need, how you feel, what is uncomfortable, what can be better. Create things that answer questions you're curious about, create things that make people think. Don't forget to breathe, which is one of the most valuable things we could do as humans, I think, breathing deeply, which I only realized recently. So for all you young people out there, don't forget. As artists, I think artists have more power than they realize to expose unknown truth and be a positive light in the lives of others. And so I encourage people to create and experience magic. Let's create and experience magic before we all die. Thank you. So as I mentioned earlier before this talk, I wanted to just point out, I just had 2 extra slides after this one. And so I went and read all of the profiles of all the people taking part in this event. And a lot of these topics came up over and over, or I think they're all just very relevant. So the things I saw were body, gender, sexuality, biometrics, politics, behavior patterns, marginalized communities, existential crises, emotions, having reservations about our own knowledge, current state of humans in the digital era, boundaries and situations, understanding cities as complex systems, disconnection between body and space. And so all of these, I mean, you know, reading everybody's profile, there's just so much beauty in these topics, you know, and if you are coming together to explore these topics, I just want you to not forget that while you're here, you know, you want to explore these topics. And this is your opportunity to kind of find out with other people who also share your similar concerns about all these things to create works. And so I just wanted to remind people, like, this is what you said, this is what you came here for, and I really encourage you to go forward with these ideas and to talk to each other about these ideas and see what you can come up with together. And also, I saw this on Nevras Hovezavi. I don't know if they're here, but I saw this quote on their website. It says, "If I'm an observer, I bear witness, and bearing witness is a necessity of art." And I thought it was just such a beautiful statement, and I felt like it bared repeating in this larger space. And yeah, I don't know if any of these participants are here, but I would love to talk about this and these things with everybody if people are interested. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel.
Thank you, Rasha.
Trying to not.
So if we have questions, you can also type into chat or use mic, and we can also.
Actually, I have a question.
Okay.
And my research is about an experience in the post-digital era and the post-human time. And you know, our experiences have changed with the pandemic. And also I'm a creator, and I always thinking about my physical exhibition.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to ask, after the pandemic, how we can exhibit the artwork in a physical area, and how do we build an experience between audience and the artwork actually?
Well, so this is why I wanted to talk about some of these other analog experiences, because in my mind, the magic is creating an experience. It's not about the technology. And so I am hoping that after, you know, this lab is done, that people will be thinking about creating experiences and all the possibilities and not limit themselves to what can happen in a headset. So I think that one of the things that's interesting is to think about your audience. I mean, that's the most important thing, actually. I take that back. Because in a way, you have to decide who is your audience. Does it matter that you, is this for you? Sometimes we make art for ourselves because we're just like, what the hell was that? Like the guy who wanted to understand better his childhood. And sometimes it's about other people. For me, I find I think the most important thing are creating experiences for one person or a very small group, like not more than 5 people. And so, because, for example, that one project with the waiting and escaping room was only for 3 to 5 people at a time. And I thought it's amazing, actually, because I think we were like 12 people or something, and we were creating an experience for a very small amount of people, you know, and I don't know, it's just because we wanted to give even a small amount of people something meaningful to walk away with. And so I think it's whatever your idea is, and how do you want to connect to them? Do you want to connect to them? Do you want them to feel something? And usually with something that's about feeling, it really involves a very small amount of people. So maybe you can create a really meaningful experience where one person is blown away, you know, and even in reality, let's say when we do exhibitions, that's always what we say, you know, we say if we can move one person, if one person gets our thing, it's all worth it, you know? And so in this way, I think you just have to figure out what is the thing you want people to feel. Are they going to feel that alone? Are they going to feel that with 3 to 5 people? Are they going to feel that in a room of 50 people? And so you kind of have to gauge what you want, because even in a giant exhibition hall, for example, you can still create a really nice intimate space for a very few amount of people. It's really just about how you want to do that. And actually, though, I mean, especially thinking about the pandemic, you know, I feel like it's going to be a while before we feel free again to be very close with people. And in that way, that's going to be like a really rich time to explore creating an experience for one person. And actually, I didn't mention it, I wanted to, but there's an organization, I have to look up the name, but they actually, their whole thing is focused on creating an experience for one person. And they can spend like 6 months, I think, to a year designing an experience for one person. And they're super amazing. There's, I think, some talks online too that are referencing that. But anyway, just to say that.
Thank you.
I was also, I mean, most of the projects seem like having an enriched psychoanalytic perspective. I mean, in my opinion, in how I saw your presentation in a, you know, psychoanalytic in a manner of discovering the subconscious of memories of a person. And it was very interesting to see that the school somehow facilitate this process with art and VR technologies. I mean, as I said, it's my opinion, and this is how I saw the projects. And so I wonder, was it sometimes hard to get over this experience, especially in the project creators? Not. I mean, I know that you said you had a kind of hard time once one of the projects was finalized, but I wonder what were thinking and what was the process? How did they get over the experience?
I think that part of the thing is that we're constantly having dialogues on these topics, because from day one, you know, we started to make pancakes on the first day, you know, and the idea is like, you know, because who gets angry over pancakes? You feel good. Someone's offering you something nice, you know? And so we have a pancake party at the beginning. And then, you know, also classes are generally quite small. Like we would have 8 to 15 people, for example, depending on whatever circumstances. Like in the pandemic, we actually did run a 4-week class and we had 8 people, but it was because of social distancing. We needed enough space and we just had enough for 8. But anyway, the thing is that everybody comes in they want something more, like they want to express these things and they don't know how. And so from my experience, I mean, I don't know, I just feel like this is what I'm dedicating my life to, helping humans to create, to think about who they are and what they care about and put that into their work. And I always see, I mean, even the toughest people really want to do this. And it's interesting actually, because also in reference to the comments about people feeling like they didn't know enough technology, like some people are a little bit concerned, like, do I know enough to be able to contribute to a VR experience, for example? But so generally I would say you can almost like divide students that we have into artists who want to learn technology and tech people who want to be more creative. And I think the artists always think that they're the ones who are lacking. They're the ones who don't have the technical knowledge, so they don't have the self-confidence. But in fact, the technical people are really frustrated that they don't know how to be creative, that they really need rules in order to kind of facilitate that process, because they don't know how, like, you know, one time in one class, I gave this one assignment that was like, let's use tools that kids use, like Scratch and, you know, simple tools to tell the story of who we are. And, you know, and I left it open, very free, you know, and one guy who was you know, more like a programmer, he was so upset with me. It was like, I need more. I need you to give me more instruction. And I was like, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to, because this is the thing. It's like, what do you want to say? Like, you express what you want to say, you know, I don't want to tell you what to do. And so, and that was on day one. So, but in the end, it was like, you know, if everybody sees that everybody's doing it, if everybody sees that everybody's sharing, I think that's why. It's like, that's why I feel like I don't really want to have classes usually that are, even one time we had a class of like 18 people and it felt like too many people, because you don't want to share your past traumas and secrets to so many people, you know, you need to keep it small. And so I feel like keeping things always small is really helpful to getting people to open up and giving people the opportunity to want to explore these topics is always, I would say, just do it and see what they tell you, because I feel like that's always the basics, you know. It's always like, before we think about technology, let's think about who we are, what we care about, what we've experienced, and then how many, because it's interesting, like you end up finding like so many people have these shared experiences of all these bad things that happen that they've either witnessed or experienced. And so it's almost like a catharsis to have these discussions with people, and then to take that into the realm of art and technology, it's like, oh my God, it's like amazing. So I just think it's the way. I think technology shouldn't be taught just like, here, download the software, let's go. It's like, no, let's first start off with who we are in the space together.
Thanks. Thanks for the answer. And also Eda sent a comment here in the chat. And also I think I grabbed a question from YouTube. I'm copying it here, or I can also read it. Should I read, Rachel, or?
Okay, so exploring the capacity of our feelings and going back to our memories are very exciting enhancements that these tools can supply. But do you think we are going to a direction where our emotional dependence to technology and its tools will increase in a Black Mirror way? Well, I think that sure, Black Mirror is here. It's here and now. I mean, look at the governments, look at what's happening in the world. I don't think that we can avoid it at this point, but emotional dependence on technology, that is a really interesting topic, actually. And I mean, I remember there was a time where I was actually addicted to my phone. I was addicted to the internet. You know, it's like I would wake up in the morning and then I would be like, I'm alive. And then it would be like, you know, what I need to check something, you know, like I would purposely think, I don't want to look at my phone. I don't want to look at the internet. And then I would just immediately, something would pop up in my mind and I'm like, oh no, I need to check it. And actually it's interesting because what happened was that my neighbor decided to set his flat on fire in a whole crazy series of events. And so then we didn't have internet for a whole year and a half or something. And I mean, the thing is that he survived. So luckily there was this. So, you know, I mean, I can talk about it now. It's like, it's not like a whole like huge trauma, but I mean, actually not having internet for a year and a half is kind of quite painful. So, but it was interesting then because it made me see my relationship to my own technology, even as a person who thinks about this a lot and understands, we still are victims to these things. You know, we're still like succumb to how sexy technology is. And so I think it's just really important to always check ourselves on these things and have conversations about them. It's very human. These are all very human issues that we're dealing with. So it's not like we're the only ones, you know, having emotional dependence, but it's definitely an issue and definitely should be talked about more.
That was a nice question, though. Thanks also for your answer. Any comments and questions? I was also going to ask about the applying process of the school. Would you also give a little bit information on that?
Yes. So, well, the thing is, so generally our classes have been traditionally 4 weeks full-time classes. And only recently, of course, with the pandemic, most of our classes have moved online. But we still actually have classes coming up in July, August, and September. And so generally people just apply on the online form, and then we set up a conversation and I interview everybody. And so that's also a thing too, because I prepare them for what is coming. You know, I'm saying like, we're going to talk about like politics and life and the hard stuff. So don't, you know, like you need to be ready for that if you're going to come to the classes. And so I don't think I've had anybody that was so scared that they just said, okay, bye, can't do that. But, and so then, yeah, it's just an application process. And I just want to understand who the human is. So in the call, it's like, I want to understand who they are as humans, and they get a chance to ask a lot of questions about the classes. And then we kind of take it from there. So it's relatively a simple process, but we do have fees, of course, but I also break it down so that like the person who's an artist student is not paying the same amount as a professional. So there are different prices. And in the past 2 years before the pandemic, we had run scholarship programs where the first year we offered like 22 scholarships to attend, so 2 people in each of the classes. And then the following year we made it fewer students, but then we also offered them housing and travel costs. So the thing is that right now it's a little bit difficult with scholarships because we have only a limited space. So if you own, because of social distancing and the kinds of things we need to care for with the pandemic. So, but we're hoping that once all this stuff is cleared up, we will start that process again. And then scholarships would be usually we open them in December and then we announce the winners in the open calls till January, and then we announce people in February, and otherwise people can still apply. I'm actually going to put out 2 additional classes for September that are both machine learning related that I think are super interesting. And they're coming up, I guess, hopefully in a week or 2. So that's something to look out for people who are really interested in machine learning. But also, again, we're going to revisit the pandemic and the situation there and see if we are able to run the classes. Otherwise, I guess we would postpone them again to 2022.
And also I have one question more. We are also looking for an answer to the questions of what do we ignore in the post-digital area, and what do you think? What do we ignore?
What should we ignore? Like not pay attention to?
Yeah, of course.
I think we should pay attention to people who are telling us to not tell our truths and speak out about what's going on in the world, because I think that this has gotten us nowhere. You know, I was thinking about it. Everybody's trying to put on this skin of being perfect, and nobody's perfect. We're all struggling. And especially, I mean, we're starting to run this series of online conversations, and we ran the first one last month. It was called Please Don't Put Your Dick in My Face, which I think is, you know, it was related to the Me Too movement, which, you know, because so many people are having difficult, there's not a lot of consent going on, and there's these, and anyway, so we had this conversation, this online conversation, and what came out of that was daddy issues. Everybody has daddy issues, you know, the fathers. I mean, even thinking about my own father, you know, I think he was like basically absent and probably a little bit of narcissist, and you know, and it's complicated, and I don't know anybody who doesn't have a complicated story about their father somehow. And so I think that this is like, let's not ignore these daddy issues. Let's not ignore everything that's happened to us in our lives. Even if people tell you, why are you talking about that? That's inappropriate. You know, it's not inappropriate, because we need to evolve as humans. You know, we need to kind of stop all the bad things that are happening now. And, you know, even I think we need to take all the leaders, you know, they need to really like go to an island on their own, you know, and like let us figure out a new way, because we can't go on, you know, and I really want to see a better world before I die. And so I don't know. I think this is just the thing. In my mind, the key is to not hold back on what's going on, not be afraid of telling people what we feel and what we think. And that's, yeah, I think that's kind of the way forward. So I hope we all do that.
My questions are ended. So any questions and comments? I also checked the YouTube again.
I definitely hope to, I mean, just to say for people who are attending this workshop, I really hope that we can check in and hear about the projects that you're thinking about. I'm sure people are already thinking about projects. The ones that I saw last week were amazing. Like I said, you know, it's like people in places like, you know, people think art isn't political, but I think a lot of times it's context, you know, and like, for example, the person last week from Turkey who was sharing, you know, what can very much be a political work in a time when it's not good to be that way. You know what I mean? It's just like cultural context and everything. And so one, I'm blown away by the ideas that people in this group have and what they're thinking about, you know, because a lot of people are like, they're not thinking this deeply. You know what I mean? They're not thinking about VR experiences that say something bigger than just, look, I can move this thing in virtual space, you know? And so the fact that everybody here has a point of view, I think is really special. And so I just really hope that we can start to have some of these conversations about the works that we're going to be creating on the hackathon next week. And because it would be really great for people to just express some of these ideas in the virtual space and see what that feels like to create a work that you believe in and that other people can relate to. And so I just, wanted to encourage people that, you know, maybe we spend this week and have more chances for one-on-ones or dialogue or something. Because also in the lab, there's also a really wonderful group of people who are also exploring similar topics, you know, and so like maybe even bringing the two groups together to have these discussions, because the discussions need to be had. So I don't know, if we can find a way to do that this coming week, I think that would be amazing. Someone just wrote, do you have any experience in these projects to put personal experience to collective ones? Well, I guess I would just say I know there are some projects. The thing is, you know, we did a class actually on social VR, and one of the interesting things was we realized the technology is not there yet. You know, it's still not affordable enough for multiple people to be able to have that one experience together. I mean, of course, there are things, virtual online experiences. Like there's what's that one art space in VR? VR art. A lot of people use. There's some, I forget what it's called, but I think exploring things there. Actually, I think that these. It's just like, I guess I would just say, as far as group experiences, actually, I did see one experience. I can put it in the forum, but it was basically VR tours. And so it was a group of people who decided they wanted to create this company that is offering VR tours. And so they created this whole space together, and they created different rooms. I think different artists took on different rooms that they wanted to see in this experience. And then, so as a collective, I think, or at least as far as I can tell, it's a collective effort that they are creating these rooms and experiences. And I think also like creating, so when people go into your VR space, like is there interaction? Like, can they touch something, smell something, eat something? You know, like kind of thinking about this, because when you add these extra elements, especially right now, because even the technology there, I have seen some technology where you can like put a smell machine on the wall and then you can time it so that the smell comes out at a certain point in the VR experience or something. But those are still really expensive. And so the way to get around that stuff is to have a bunch of people on your team who are, you know, kind of, you know, someone is the scent person who puts the scent in the space. Someone hands someone the object in the right moment in the VR experience where they have something in their hand. And so there's kind of a teamwork that can happen in that kind of experience. So those are things to kind of look out for, I think.
Thanks for the question, Gülden, also. So before closing down, maybe we could make a small announcement again. So Sunday we will be listening to Mohsen, and also in Matrix, but the talk on Sunday will be on 3 p.m. CET. And also in Matrix, we asked everyone to share hashtags to see and share their interest better. So please do write, everyone. And that's make easier to find your groups in Hackathon too. So Rachel, also, as you mentioned, with the lab, how can we contribute with the lab? That we can also discuss it.
Well, I think, yeah, if we can ask Matthias and Ekmel, I think, who are leading that, if there are ways to come together, because right now is also the critical point for them where they also need to create works. And they're also in the thought process of like, okay, what is the work I want to create? So everybody's basically in that space right now. And so I feel like this week in particular, especially because the hackathon is happening next week, this is the moment to start to try to prototype your ideas and start to create things. Because also, I mean, you know how it works, I think, with like I mean, I always wondered like how I want to be in a band. How do I be in a band, you know? And I think usually the way it is, it's like if I want to be a singer, for example, then I sing and I put it out there, and then someone else hears it and they're like, oh wow, I love that. I play drums. You want to do something together? Because I feel like that's the natural way that a nice band would work, as opposed to that, because otherwise you don't know what each other have to offer. And then it's this whole like negotiation scenario of like, oh, I just sang that thing. Is that weird? Do y'all not like my style? I mean, you know, and so it's just like, let's put our style out there. Let's put our prototypes out there. Let's put our ideas out. And then everyone can see where everybody's at. And then the collaborations, I think, happen much more naturally in that kind of scenario. So I would encourage that.
That was a very good analogy. Thank you.
Let's start a band, everybody. Come on.
Yes, that's very energetic. Okay, then thank you so much, Rachel, for your good presentation. And thank you for being with us today.
Sure, see you Sunday.
Yeah.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
See you Sunday.
So.
See you. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for everyone to join today's event. Thank you so much.